So I'm Jay Chaney, Chief Strategy Officer and founder of Broken Heart Love Affair in Toronto. Broken Heart Love Affair is a brand transformation agency basically designed of all senior creative leaders, with a whole vision to bring back love to brands again. Canadians are particularly set up well, given our sensitivity to other people and kind of forming those kind of social bonds. We're just great storytellers, and I think we find stories that can connect emotionally with people. Canada's a great testing bed for creativity. We have some amazing talent here. The Canadian dollar is relatively cheap, and it's a small market, so you can get a lot more done with a lot less dollars in Canada, and I think the quality is world renowned. So it's just a really great place to create, but also to test that creative as well.
Jay, it's a pleasure having you in studio.
Cassim, nice to see you.
I'm really excited to be digging into this because for the people that don't know the Royal Ontario Museum, people who may not live in Ontario or Canada at large, I think the client, the museum itself, is worth maybe setting up a little bit.
Sure. That's great. I mean, Royal Ontario Museum is been around for about 120 years in Ontario. It's a central cultural hub, and it was established to be that in the very beginning. I would say as a museum in the world is one of the largest collections and actually one of the largest research facilities. And then I think the largest number of researchers on staff in the world for a museum. So just quite an amazing institution. And I think in the past, we just haven't been doing justice to what this organization actually represented.
Did you have that impression before you were introduced to this client?
Yeah, I did. I mean, just as an everyday kind of consumer, Ontarian, and even somebody who loves art and culture,
right,
and learning, I kind of saw it as a very kind of static place where you take kids effectively, right? Like I've seen it, it's been there, it's institutional.
Yeah.
Like I've been there, I've seen what's there, I don't need to go back. And so, when you have out of town guests, sure, let's go check it out. And so it, really working on this project gave me a completely different perspective on its role in society, but also, how kind of dynamic it actually is.
Yeah. The potential for being a connector of people through space that ties them to history whilst also establishing, future.
Correct.
Through that connection. So
that's right.
I think, museums play a really interesting role in society. And it must have been a very exciting kind of opportunity when you started rolling your sleeves up with it.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, we were lucky because at the time, the CMOs, Lorie Davidson, who my business partner, Carlos, and I had worked with previously, and Craig and James, who work at our shop, when we worked on Sick Kids. And so she was the CMO at Sick Kids and had gone to Royal Ontario Museum, and we kind of just brought the crew back together. And it was at an interesting moment for the Royal Ontario Museum because a new CEO had also come in from the Smithsonian, Josh. And so he brought a new vision. There's new energy from a CMO perspective, and somebody who had done amazing work in the past in Lorie. And so it was just a really interesting kind of opportunity. We had also just opened our shop. So, we opened during the pandemic, and here we are getting to work on something as critical as Royal Ontario Museum when basically all these institutions were shut down for lockdown.
Fascinating time. Yeah. That's an interesting context.
Yeah. It was really fun.
So this also probably got you to dig in with them in a kind of untethered, all doors open sort of way.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. I mean, Lorie coming in new, didn't have any preconceived notions, but also she's, pretty good at pushing for some pretty significant insights and answers. And so, yeah, I think, that context, the context of being pushed and everybody coming in new, allowed us to create something that new for the organization.
Okay. So how did they set it up for you in terms of expressing their frustrations or their needs?
Well, I think the big thing that they realized in their research, well, one, let's just kind of center it and say, at the time, nobody was going to the ROM because everything was shut down.
Right.
And so, they were obviously...
This is what year, sorry?
This was probably just 2020, late 2020, early 2021.
Okay. And for anyone that's watching this or listening to this that's outside of Canada, I think it's worth mentioning that here in Ontario, we were experiencing early and then very late lockdowns
Yeah.
and restricted kind of population movement.
100%.
So
Yeah.
these sorts of places that, like, you know, I'll say this for myself, if I'm like, you know, father of a young child, we go to the ROM and during winter quite frequently, and we're members of the ROM. So having those sorts of places not being in our like arsenal of entertainment for the family is like painful. You know?
It was 100%.
Yeah.
They were feeling the effects. I think the other thing that they saw in research was that, you know, while the museum has been around for a while and many of us that grew up in Ontario had a relationship with the museum, and that's in itself was challenging because we had a preconceived notion of what it was there for. It's for school trips or, right? But there's a whole segment of the population that was new to Ontario that didn't have any relationship with it, but also were reporting that they didn't see themselves reflected in the museum itself. The name Royal was challenging for some people, right? This idea that it's kind of like a monarchy established by the monarchy, or, you know, it's kind of has this basis in some kind of you know, historical kind of very kind of white centric storytelling was very difficult for people to connect with. So, you know, I think at that time when everybody stopped going was a great time to kind of reformat people's expectations and relationship with the organization.
Okay, so let's walk through this idea. So the commission was to rebrand.
That's right.
How do you dig into that? Is there something that even though you said that your shop was new at the time,
yeah,
is there a particular methodology you already created, or has this project kind of informed that process?
So I think on the whole, you know, I've approached things pretty consistently through the last, I'd say, decade of my career, and refined it through the, you know, every time I do a project like this, especially like this, we learn from it and we're able to kind of refine. And so it's kind of an iterative process for sure. You know, but I think to your question, the first way we kind of came in was to forget everything we thought we knew. And that's a very difficult thing because you come with all your biases and assumptions. So to wipe your brain clean of what it was and start to think what it can be or should be is a fundamental part of that process, is just ignore everything as much as possible and start from scratch.
And in a time where there's lockdowns and you can't kind of roll up your sleeves with survey data and, you know, segment the user profiles,
that's right,
jump into actually analyzing what people, you know, say, believe, feel about the brand. How did you start, I guess, once you, and also, sorry, I should back up. Was this a competitive commission, or was this something that you know, you could roll up your sleeves with right away?
Well, we were in a competitive bid for this. I think it was like 3 agencies that were presenting. We were chosen for our vision for the Royal Ontario Museum. To get back to your first question, where we start was the CEO, Josh, had come in with a very firm vision for what he wanted ROM to be. And so for us, I think it was critical to not only acknowledge it, but actually embrace it and understand what he truly was trying to accomplish with this kind of new vision for this space, which was to be kind of a cultural hub of conversation, right? Not to be a place of conclusions, to be a place of just open dialogue about any topic, you know, complicated or uncomplicated, but all of it designed to invite people in to be open to learning something new.
And how did you divine that, you know, with depth from him? Procedurally. So I think, you know, first, again, we did have a segmentation study. I think it was done by Environics. And what we looked at was there was 1 or 2 segments that Environics had proposed trying to connect with. We looked and saw a much broader swath of segments and found a kind of connective thread between them all. And what that connective thread was that, you know, these people were fundamentally motivated by experiencing things that were different to them, right? And eye-opening. And so, you know, regardless of what the segment was, there was that kind of desire to learn and grow. And so we kind of also embraced that, right? This idea that, you know, growing with the organization was critical. And to me, what that signals more is I want to be active in my life, right? And so I'm attracted to places that are active in growing me. And if you go back to what I was saying earlier about my perception personally, this was a very static place, right? This is a place where the objects are fixed. Yeah.
It's very quiet.
Right.
People are standing still. There's not a lot of dynamic energy coming out of a museum. Even the word museum almost kind of makes you feel like it's going to be a quiet adventure for you.
Dusty, spooky.
100%. Right.
Same place you were scared of when you were a kid.
Exactly. All the things you didn't want in life. Yeah.
Until it comes to life.
Exactly. Exactly. Like the movie.
Yeah, it's true. It's an interesting observation. I think that a lot of people that I talk to, of course, even about the ROM, I think that the thing is like, any museum you go to has the opportunity to unlock this, like, I would say like cultural knowledge, but also the cultural imagination that, can inspire an individual, and that sense of adventure that's possible, shouldn't be limited to a particular exhibit that's been there forever.
100%.
Yeah.
And the question becomes, how do you move people from passive kind of observers of these things to actively involved in them? Right. So you're not just a person coming in as an audience member, but you're in there and you're part of that museum experience as well.
Right. Okay. So you have a video for us to look at?
I have a video for you to look at. It's 6 minutes long. It's a very
That's all good.
It's a very long video. Yeah.
Set it up. What are we going to look at?
So this is the launch of the IMMORTAL platform.
Okay.
Right. And so just for context, ROM in the past had been very much, the Barney colors. It was green and purple, very kid friendly, very much fixated on just the exhibitions that were taking place at the museum.
Mm-hmm.
Again, we wanted to kind of transform that and kind of get to more of the human kind of side of the museum and then more of a kind of a dynamic side.
Okay.
To open up conversation around effectively human history and the impact that it's had on us. So this is an examination of basically the entirety of human history, touching on some very beautiful moments, some very challenging moments, some incredibly heartbreaking moments, but it's all part of our story.
And how does this fit into your work, the asset that we're about to review?
So as an agency, we're kind of known for doing big film work. So this is a big film. Mark Zibert was the director, Canadian. Graham Chisholm was the editor, Canadian. And so, I think overall, it's just like we are known for the video. It's not just a video. It's a whole transformation of the entire organization, the way they operate, the way people are evaluated. This was a way of just signaling we've changed and that we're here to do something different for you. So you get that sense. The hope is that you come away from this kind of like completely catapulted in a whole new world of Royal Ontario Museum.
Let's take a look.
Let's check.
All right.
My mother is 4,600,000,000 years old. She is the mother of the seas, the land, life itself. I am one of 177 billion born. To feel sorrow, love, hate, jealousy, joy. I will paddle the rivers of Turtle Island, be born into a rich family, die at 19 a pharaoh of Egypt. I will be beheaded. I will be a girl. I will be shamed. I will live through a pandemic. Or die in one. I am the inventor of light. I will fly. Take a giant leap. I will uncover the remains of giants. I will sing, dance, paint, be deaf yet write symphonies. I will tattoo beautiful images upon my skin. Write Journey to the West, 1984. Song of Solomon. I will burn them all. Persecute in the name of faith, freedom, profit. I will sacrifice everything. I will be bought and sold for the color of my skin. My feet will be bound. My land will be stolen. I will be starved, imprisoned, tattooed with a number, and found in a mass grave. I will amuse myself to death. I am the unknown soldier. My life dedicated to emancipating my people. I will be the first of my gender, my race, my family to vote. I will have a dream. I will carve the story of my people in a tower of cedar and spray it on walls. I am a Muslim, a Hindu, a Christian, a Jew. I will be no one except to those who love me. I will give birth, and I will die. But I will live on in what I leave behind.
Okay, so I get the narrative,
Yeah.
and I think it makes sense. And immortal, of course, being the word that encapsulates this, like,
That's right.
non-finite experience of human life and death in one.
Right.
But this particular video,
Mm-hmm.
is this how you unveiled?
It was how we unveiled it. We obviously launched with it at a big event, and then we pushed this through. I think it was in theaters and online video. It was also an installation at the ROM itself, so people can go and sit and watch within the context of the ROM. But it was really meant to generate conversation. So there's like a 6-minute form. There's a cut down to 30s. There's kind of shorter forms that can be used in more kind of media friendly places.
Mm-hmm.
But that was the center of it. At the same time, we worked redesign the entire ROM experience. So there was a identity redesign that was done by Leo. So we worked in concert with Leo to create that. We changed the way people approach a job. So how they're evaluated was about creating immortal experiences for people. This idea that all of us basically are immortal to some degree in terms of the impact we have on other people and kind of the ideas we leave behind in those individuals through are touching them in some way, shape, or form. So everything from the badges right down to how people were evaluated, what they were there to do, kind of this mantra for how they should show up was a part of it as well.
Amazing. So in terms of like, I guess, sketching out how different parts of this project could be defined going back before the work started. How was that communicated to you, and how was that something that evolved as you got into it?
No, I think it was like we pretty much defined it from day one and mapped out the next few years. This was designed to be something that they can grow into over time. We've just released a second chapter of this story. So the museum itself kind of focuses on human history, natural history, and arts and culture. So we released a second video, which was around the natural history. And again, to the same degree, it's as big and epic as this. Features a chimpanzee singing opera while the world's kind of like destroying and creating at the same time behind it. Very beautiful piece, just as big and cinematic as this. And so that's the second installation. The third will probably be around art and culture, I'd imagine.
So this particular film, how long did it take to conceive, to produce, and then, I guess to refine, if that was part of it?
Yeah, I think so. This particular film, I would say we started, the strategy started in, I would say, January through to February. Then the creative was developed conceptually between, let's say, February and March, and it was shot in the summer and in market by September.
Okay.
So it's, beginning and about 6 months of total work for everybody. And so again, and in that is a lot of board presentations. ROM has a pretty sizable number of boards that are involved and have to approve. And at the time, there was provincial money that was supporting the ROM as they kind of went through the pandemic. So there's a lot of conversations to be had around the use of money. We actually had to find a private donor to sponsor this film.
Oh, wow.
So because they just didn't have the budget, and this is such a huge production, that somebody with the resources was able to kind of come through and want this film to exist. So,
and was that a donor that was already familiar with the ROM?
It was, yeah. It was somebody that's already kind of an existing donor and had a relationship with ROM and saw the importance of the film itself.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. I mean, the scope is large for what you guys put on film.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is underwater.
Yeah.
Or it leaves an impression.
It leaves an impression that's underwater.
What was that in terms of the narrative? What was that device for?
Well, it's this idea that Earth is a mother and this is the womb, and all this is existing within the mother itself, right, and under the care of Mother Earth. And so, yeah, it's made to look like it's underwater. It was shot in a studio in South Africa.
Oh, wow.
Truckloads of sand came in, and then it's this all lighting and smoke effects that creates that kind of water type experience for this. But it's all meant to be centered in the womb of Earth, effectively.
Okay, so you filmed this in South Africa. Why?
It's a great question. I mean, it all comes down to a whole bunch of considerations: budgets, timing, access to certain talent. But I think in this particular case, I don't know the specific answer as to why specifically it's South Africa. I have to imagine it's just to accomplish what we accomplished, given the resources we had available to us.
But I think it's also kind of interesting to paint the picture of us being in Canada, you being a Canadian agency, and thinking of this iconic brand as client that's not only probably iconic for our local population, but like you said, like it's one of the places that a tourist coming to the city would immediately go to.
100%.
And it provides this kind of like legacy knowledge of what this place is as well. So very important in the Canadian kind of cultural identity.
Correct. Yes.
And to be able to work for this iconic Canadian brand, elsewhere, tells of the capacities of Canadians as well. I mean,
Right.
the want to be able to go to the complete other side of the world
100%. Yeah.
is fascinating to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And to, you look at the scope of like the director, Mark's work globally, and he's in that kind of demand, working for Nike and others around the world, and Graham's the same. And, and a lot of the work that we're doing is being culled. So it's kind of going both ways. Like we're kind of going out into the world, but the world's also coming into us at the same time.
How do you think that relates to our identity as Canadians?
It's really interesting. I think, I talked to somebody about this the other day. We're well received in the global advertising community and the creative community, I think primarily because we grew up semi-sensitive to other individuals and their experience of the world. Mm-hmm. And I think what makes us really great at telling stories, and Canada has a great kind of rich history of storytelling, and comedy, frankly, it's because we pay attention to others, and we're kind of, empathetic to a certain degree of the experience of others, and at least we're sensitive to it. And I think that allows us to become, very talented in the creative fields. And it resonates not just in local markets, but on global markets. And so this piece was picked up around the world, and a lot of the work is picked up around the world because it makes sense for everybody, right? It's not a Canadian exclusive story, although the ROM itself is fixed in Canada. The story is kind of transcends borders. And so I think, a lot of our work tries to accomplish that. And I think, globally, a lot of Canadian agencies are recognized for that type of work as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I've long thought of our population here in the country as being kind of, so diverse that we kind of can appreciate, understand, communicate, and relate to the rest of the world because it's reflected in our actual demographics.
That's right.
And Canadians, of course, have living links to all these places that we've come from or our forefathers have come from.
That's right.
So that's very powerful for tying us to the world.
100%.
Within the world of, let's call it cultural institutions, museums, how did this work generate conversation, do you think?
So it's really interesting. I think, Josh was brought actually to Europe to speak on, transforming museum brands and telling new narratives around museums.
Okay.
And what museums should be going.
And when was that? When did he?
That was probably about 6 months after the launch of this particular piece.
Okay.
And so, globally, the piece was recognized as kind of almost taking the charge for museums and what they can be going to the future. Because I think the idea of museums is just being challenged notionally across the world, right? I think it's a very challenging idea for a lot of people, given that where a lot of the artifacts come from, how they were procured, who typically kind of created museums in the past and why. I think, that story is evolving. So Josh was seen as a leader in kind of telling a new narrative and an important narrative about the role of museums and how important they are in society.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, especially because the legacy, I might be over speaking here from my limited knowledge, but the Smithsonian plays this really, or has historically played a large archival kind of role, right? Mm-hmm. And the idea of a lot of hidden knowledge being behind its doors.
That's right.
So I think it's interesting coming to Toronto to reverse that and say we're opening up a museum to raise dialogue in society. Right. Is interesting.
Well, and they're doing it's really fascinating, but studying bats during the pandemic and just trying to understand how to stop new pandemics. So it's not even just a place of archiving history necessarily, but a place of trying to kind of unlock some of the keys of humanity through science in the basements of these places. And you don't even see that, right? You have no idea that it exists.
Yeah.
That all these people are running around trying to figure out how to save humanity in some way, shape, or form. And, the objects are just a way of really showcasing some of that work.
So this word immortal, how have people who, go to the museum and once it was launched, how have you measured people relating to this conceptually?
Well, we're starting to see, so they've done post-brand tracking to see that people's relationships with ROM particularly are kind of repairing. And so more people are starting to show an indication that they find themselves being represented in the museum. And I think it's through stories like you just saw where, it's not just about one particular segment of history, but it's about all people. And so it's telling all people's stories. And I think, the data from the brand studies that have been done show a kind of almost an increase in the number of individuals who typically saw themselves outside of the ROM or not being included in the ROM experience being now included in the ROM itself.
You mentioned also working internally at the ROM with the staff.
That's right.
So are there any lessons that you can share from, I guess, detail that again for me, the work that you did for the staff.
Right.
In terms of, was it uniforms and this kind of stuff?
So everything changed and including, I think, their employee handbooks and like onboarding and evaluations and how consumers our visitors are surveyed. It was all came down to this idea of the immortal experience and leaving an immortal impact on people that you come in contact with there. And
what defines that, by the way?
That's a great question. I think at the end of the day, it's just how people feel that they had a positive experience with that individual and to maximize that kind of encounter with that individual so that you never really forget it effectively.
Okay.
So, institutionalizing that and kind of just making that the charge, giving people a bit of a bigger purpose of working at ROM. You don't just work at a museum, you work at a place that's really challenged to leave an indelible mark on people. And so you yourself have a role to play in that, whether you're cleaning the bathrooms or whether you're, guiding people through exhibitions. Everybody has a role to play in making sure that everybody has an amazing experience that they never forget from Rome. So that's part of it. The other part is, we've even gone so far as to talk about how to reformat the experiences of some of the artifacts that are in the museum itself, because typically you go and you look and there's an artifact and then there's a date stamp and a description of what it is. But what we kind of unlocked in this strategy is that all those objects are not passive objects. They're not static objects.
Right.
They're just portals to these amazingly rich stories, right? And so it's not just a teacup. It's a teacup that a emperor once held, right? And that emperor was killed in that moment. And there's all these amazing stories. So you look at this teacup and it's like, what is the story behind that teacup? What underlies it? And so we've accomplished that with a lot of the print work is you have an object and then we contextualize it and give it a backstory, just as we're doing today. Just to give it more depth and give people more appreciation for what it went through and why it matters to look at it. Which didn't exist before.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting. It's fascinating, in fact, the potentiality for storytelling, using objects as icons. And that also they can stand as we use the word object, right?
Yeah.
So they can stand as these kind of arbitrary reference points that everyone can relate to.
100%.
So opportunities for storytelling in multiple narratives from that object are possible.
That's right.
Which is very, very intriguing and exciting.
Yeah.
If you look at wayfinding and the physical footprint of objects within or artifacts within the museum, was that something that was also readdressed?
That's something they're undergoing right now.
Okay.
So they're going through a pretty major transformation physically within the building itself. So it's called Open ROM right now, but they're opening up the main floor. They're bringing objects down to the main floor. They've made it free for people to come and see, but there will be a center point of kind of almost like a cultural hub in the middle. And a part of that will ultimately be wayfinding and new ways of kind of experiencing those exhibits and artifacts.
It's interesting because some of the things that are in that museum that are the tentpole experiences are not necessarily available to people that come in a way that like enables them to spend time with those artifacts.
Yes.
I've noticed this a lot with my daughter because the one thing that we always must see is the mummy.
Yep.
Must see the mummy.
Must see the mummy.
And when you get to the mummy, it's a bottleneck,
Yep.
There's all these people stuck in there. And then where's their space? It's typically the most space around the dinosaurs. And people are like, been there, done that.
Yeah.
And then they, so it's very fine. It's a fine experience to have to, or I should say it takes a lot of work to refine the experience of the museum.
100%. And then you think about that, even that experience you just highlighted with your daughter and the mummy, and it's like there's this bottleneck of people and they're all standing as individuals amongst their, like you and your daughter are there, but nobody's really discussing or talking about it, and everybody's quiet and everybody's why? Like, why is that the case? Why are we not kind of all sharing in this experience together and having almost like a borderline communal experience around this thing that's very fascinating to all of us, apparently?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's interesting. And then, of course, there's touch points that guests have in the museum with objects that are more social. And you see that, of course, in the basement where there's a cafeteria.
Yep.
Or where there's a coffee shop on the ground floor.
Yep.
Or, of course, where there are gift shops.
Yeah.
And suddenly you can look at touch stuff, and unfortunately that for parents results in lighter wallets. But it's really interesting, right? That there are, you could prove that it's incorrect to assume that these spaces are purely sanct spaces.
Correct.
For reverence and deep thought.
Right.
It's really just about how we interact with them.
That's correct.
And it's cool to hear the story of how, you've set in motion a new path for the museum. What do the next few years kind of look like for this project's legs, but also any other work that relates to it for you guys as an agency? Yeah,
I think, like, as I said before, there's the three pillars of the museum. So we've done human history, we've done now natural history, and we'll probably move into arts and culture next as the major tent poles.
Okay.
In between all those, we've done some major exhibitions. So we just did one for Auschwitz. And it was a beautiful series of letters from people that were in the camp, and it's just a really kind of gut-wrenching kind of piece that we did for them. We've done cats, which is a little bit less, and it's a little bit more playful and just fun, but all built off this idea of this immortal experiences. So we've been doing these like smaller campaigns for the exhibitions themselves. And then something we're starting to do more and more of is, I think this week, in fact, we did the natural history piece with the chimpanzee, and the chimpanzees singing the opera aria, and they're having a Toronto Opera Company come in and actually sing live that song for members, and it sold out within 20 seconds or something like that.
Amazing.
Like they just put it out, everybody wanted to be a part of it.
Right.
So starting to connect some of the advertising back to the actual physical experiences within the museum and extend the messaging that happens there is part of it as well. So we're trying to do more and more of that and drive people in.
As an agency, what are your like focal mediums or strengths? It sounds like film is a major part of what you do.
Yeah. I mean, the concept behind what we're trying to accomplish is to reformat people's emotional experiences with brands in order to reformat their relationship with those brands. Mm-hmm. The best way to accomplish that is film as a medium. The audio, the video cues, really allowed for, a full kind of personal integration into the story.
Oh, for sure.
So we very much focus on that. So we do a lot of big film. We do a lot of out of home. I love the idea of, in a digital world, people experiencing things in very tangible, physical ways.
Okay, what's an example?
Reality. We just did the cheese string 0% American cheese billboard, and it's just like literally that's all it says, right? And just a little joke during some tariff talk and the 51st state talk, just conveying the sense that this cheese is 100% Canadian in a very Canadian way by saying we're not American. And so, going out with a few billboards, but actually conveying it in a very communal sense helps us believe that everybody else also knows that to be true. So that's also part of it. Is a lot of what we do is very much about making people feel safe within the knowledge of the community. Mm-hmm. So that, you and I we do things because we feel like other people think they're important. Whatever community we feel safe in, that's what we do. So what we try to accomplish is to create these things that make people feel like everybody else knows this to be true. And then I feel safe to act on it.
How does this, just bring you back to the ROM, and yeah. I'm intrigued to know what the museum's thought or museum leadership's thought of the power of membership in the new era of, let's call it like media experiences looks mm-hmm. like. Are mm-hmm. they re-envisioning how membership and people's feeling of kind of belonging and community of the museum is going to change?
100%. And I think that's why Josh is pushing so hard to have this to be almost a community hub and to really open up. Like if you look at the museum as it was designed, and it's a beautiful piece of architecture, no doubt, mm-hmm. but it's on the corner of Bloor and Avenue or University. Okay. But it's a very closed off experience. There's 2 doors in, it's dark. You can't find your way in. He's really opening it up and trying to make it so that it's easy to get into, but not only easy to get into, but to see the people inside. And when you come in, to your point on the mummy, how do you get people to kind of come around this piece together and create more of that communal sense is part of the mandate and the work they're doing right now.
Yeah, and for our audience that may be unfamiliar, because you're outside of the city or whatnot, with the specific location that we're talking about, right?
Mm-hmm.
The neighborhood has a lot of very interesting history where it's actually in a neighborhood called Yorkville.
Mm-hmm.
Yorkville in the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I should say, 60s, 70s
Yep.
was a center of a pivotal place in the city for cultural expression.
Correct.
It was a hippie central,
Mm-hmm.
and it was peaceful protest kind of ground zero.
Yep.
And now it's kind of inverted as things happen, and the urban topography gentrifies, whereby you've got the museum anchoring a kind of an open access for all people by being on an actual subway station called Museum. It's on the main subway line.
Mm-hmm.
It's on a major artery that's a road or 2 arteries, so it's easy to get to in a way.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it's in this very expensive neighborhood, sat across from a Hyatt Grand Hotel. Is it a Hyatt
Correct.
Grand?
That's right.
And so it stands for a couple of things, that location, which is history itself within the city.
Yep.
The constant transformation of the city, but also affording people access despite income and despite any exclusive factors. There's a Dior shop.
That's
doors
right.
down the road, right?
That whole street is all of this high-end shopping, right?
So it's very interesting.
Yeah.
And next door to it, of course, is another institution, right?
That's right. Yeah. Is it the Battleship Museum?
The Royal Conservatory of Music.
Oh, is it right there? Yeah.
Yeah. The Royal Conservatory of Music's next door, and then
nice.
past that, the Battleship Museum is a block down.
Right.
On the other side of the one of the largest, I guess, football pitches that the University of Toronto has.
That's right. Yeah.
So,
yeah,
interesting location.
Yeah, and one of the things you brought up a great point, which is there are people. This isn't a very kind of expensive neighborhood now, and there are people without means, and one of the things that ROM has done brilliantly is to make that first floor free, so people who don't have the means to come in can still come in and enjoy the museum and the conversation without having to pay. So it's this idea of a free first floor, effectively, which they instituted last year.
Yeah. And I think the museum has already, it's made good headway over years to welcome all sorts of people to it in these sorts of, activations.
Mm-hmm.
There's like open doors nights where there's live music and DJs and you can come through. Right. And I think the people of Toronto celebrate that institution for being able to, access it and own it collectively.
That's right.
So that's super exciting.
Yeah.
Canada, okay? Yeah. Massive country in terms of landmass, right? What is it? Second largest in the world?
Mm-hmm.
One of the smallest populations, 40 million people.
Yep.
It's clustered along the U.S. border in just a few cities.
Yep.
The agency sector, 150, 200 agencies across the country engaged in creative work. To work with an institution of this, cultural significance in Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that would be a possibility in other countries that you would be able to get a commission like this, or is there anything unique to this project that you think being in Canada enabled your agency to do the work that you did?
Well, that's a great question. I haven't really thought about the answer to that question, or that question, to be 100% frank. But in retrospect, I think, I don't know. I don't know if there's anything particularly unique about this situation. Other than the enormity of the ask, which is to create this place as this global cultural hub, and and this kind of sensibility of, well, why not? Why couldn't we be, right? And I think there's a bit of kind of like naivety to Canadians in a certain way.
We take on big tasks.
We take on big tasks with very little resources and do really big things, and maybe that's part of it. And this kind of, that kind of beaver spirit in us, which like just resourcefulness and can do. And I think when I go to places like Cannes or wherever, what you see classically from Canadian agencies, and you see in this film, is we accomplish a lot with very little. right? And there's that's the power of our creativity, I think. And it's interesting, was in, States once talking to a chief creative officer down there, and they said, what do you think the difference is between the American work and Canadian work? And I said, American work very much relies on, some kind of classic ingredients of like celebrity, big music track, but it lacks like an idea in certain ways. And the Canadian kind of creative and cultural scene really has to cling to the idea, because that's all we really have sometimes, and we have to do a lot with very little. And so when you see like Rethink or Courage or any of those other agencies are doing really great work, they're doing some world-class work on probably 1/100th the budget of UK and the United States.
Right.
And so there's something in that. And so could you accomplish it anywhere else? Sure. But I think we're just better at it because we just don't have as many resources available to us.
Yeah. And so I think that's something that, like, Canadians have been doing the reps for a while on being able to articulate brand and tell stories.
That's right.
In ways that are effective, because we don't have maybe the budgets to find reach.
Yep.
At the same time, our country is so small that, like, we have to communicate equally to all of that population.
That's right.
And it's a very diverse population is probably the third thing. So we're speaking to the world at once when we talk to Canadians.
Yeah. 100%. And, it's really interesting. Part of our practice, I don't even look at demographics when I'm doing my planning. I look at kind of psychographics, and I look at it on a human level. And I think, to your point, if you try to approach things on a demographic level within a country like Canada, the way it's composed and, how diverse it is, you could fragment your budget very quickly and minimize impact. So you have to find kind of like this happy medium for everybody. And that kind of exists in that idea that we're all humans. And I was doing a study for a restaurant that has locations in Canada, the United States, and they asked for the differences between the two countries. And I love this line that Canada is a country built on negotiation, right? That, you had the French and the British, and then there was a war. And then at the end of the day, they negotiated kind of a common ground. And from that day forward, we just learned to negotiate with everybody coming in, as opposed to making them bend to our will. And we could debate whether that's 100% true. I don't think it is, but there's still a bit of like that negotiation kind of aspect of us, that we're willing to work with others. We're interested in others' stories. We want to embrace their stories, and we want to kind of convey ours to them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Negotiate with the weather every day.